But by the colors alone, you see Michael Jordan had more help versus less competition, and LeBron James had less help versus harder competition than Michael Jordan. If you can come up with a better criteria than what I just laid out, I am all ears.
Peace and blessings, y'all. Welcome to GOAT James Kingdom. I'm the Exposer, and this is Expose Time. This episode is about my ultimate help versus comp comparison criteria. And watch how these Michael Jordan fans shuffle for words and how they just literally contradict themselves throughout the conversation. Now, like I've always stated, these are criteria that were set by them themselves. These are the things that we here in GOAT James Kingdom, so I put them all here, and here it is for you to see. What you're going to see is they're going to mention everything and try to discredit everything, but not the all-NBA or all-defensive selections. So here we go, y'all. Let's go with the first one.
Ralph, go ahead.
Well, when I talk about the competition, I don't use players individually like that. I mean, they have a lot of impact on it, but I look at the whole totality of the team versus team, because it's not a one-on-one and 2-on-2 or 3-on-3 or whatever. So, I mean, my criteria is a little different than that.
What would it be then? How would you determine it?
I would determine the team on winning percentage, offensive rating, defensive rating, and where they were seated in the playoffs and everything. Not just wins. I'm not just saying wins. I'm talking about where they were ranked at that time within, like, on the offensive side and defensive side.
Okay, so he mentioned team records and team winning percentages. He mentioned some other things, but let's keep in mind the team records. We're going to talk about this again.
I said records, winning percentages, and also their rankings in that season of offense and defense. That's where I compare them with.
Okay, so let's go ahead and compare some teams by using his criteria. He said using team records, their offensive and defensive ranking and rating. Here we have the 2009 Cleveland Cavaliers. These Cavs were 66-16, the number one seed in the conference that year. They had the number one defense in the NBA that year. They were also ranked top 5 in both offensive rating and defensive rating and had the number one net rating in the NBA in 2009. But let's go ahead and compare them to the 2013 Miami Heat. The 2013 Miami Heat also won 66 games that year. They were the number one seed in the East. But they were only top 5 in offensive rating, not in defensive rating, but they were top 5 in offense and defense for 2013. And the Heat net rating wasn't number 1 in 2013 like the Cavs were in 2009. So by Ralph's criteria, the 2009 Cavs were actually better than the 2013 Miami Heat. And what I told the panel was, by using this criteria, we truly cannot compare teams from different eras and different seasons, because it's truly not a fair way of doing so, because obviously you can see the 2009 Cavaliers are not better than the 2013 Heat. And I'm going to show you why. So if we go right on ahead and use my criteria to go ahead and compare these same two teams, what you will have is that the Cleveland Cavaliers of 2009 had 2 All-Stars, 1 All-NBA player, 1 All-Defensive player, the league MVP, and 1 20-point per game scorer. Now, if we go to the 2013 Miami Heat team, they had 3 All-Stars, 2 All-NBA players, 1 All-Defensive player, the league MVP, and 2 20-point per game scorers. Now look at this. Isn't this a better way to determine which team was better? If we went by Ralph's criteria of going off of team records and offensive rating, seedings, it will not show which team is actually better than the other team from one season to the next. The criteria I laid out actually does. But this won't be the last we'll hear about seeding and team records. Let's just move on to the next panelist because he has something to say.
Man, I always say this. It's like I hear everybody complain how bad the 90s were, except when you want to compare them to LeBron teammates. And all of a sudden the 90s was great, because this is all I see is this is the only time players was actually good at the 90s when you want to compare them to LeBron James teammates. Like, it's just weird to me.
That's false. Again, I showed you the players who were getting 20 points per game on teams. You guys say that doesn't matter. So these things are factors into how teams are becoming one of the best teams.
I'm not saying exactly what you're saying about the far as
what I'm telling you is that when we say that the 90s had not enough good players, is because the expansion allowed scrub players to be starters now. Guys who would be the 6th, 7th man on the bench are now 3rd, 4th, 5th options on teams.
Now, we don't blame Craig for bringing this up because, like we tell you guys, listen, we take one for the team. And obviously, you guys always hear about how the 90s is watered down and the expansion era destroyed the talent and basically thinned out the talent in the 90s. But we did a video explaining the watering down of the 90s. If you go back in our channels, you can go ahead and see and look at that video. But here we'll quickly explain it with the career of Greg Anthony. Greg Anthony was drafted by the New York Knicks in '91. He spent 4 years as a 6th man coming off of the bench. As soon as the expansion of '95 hits, he becomes a starter on the Vancouver Grizzlies. So he goes from being on the bench to being a full-fledged starter on an NBA roster. Not only that, the '97 Grizzlies actually have one of the worst records in NBA history. This is what we mean by the watering down of the 90s. We are not trying to say that there were no good players in the 90s. We are saying that because they added more teams, the talent in the 90s got spread out thin, and a lot of teams usually only had one good player or maybe 2 good players and a bunch of role players. That is not disrespecting the players of the 90s. So hopefully that clears that part of the discussion, because again, there are great players in every era, but the 90s are clearly watered down. But let's go on to a special guest speaker.
I will say this, what I caught just now with the 20-point scorers, you got to take that into context, because right now in the NBA, there's 55 players averaging over 20 points a game, and that's double just from the 2000s where there was like 25. So to say a 20-point scorer means more help, depending on the context, depending on the era, depending on the style of play, there's so many other things. Like, do you want one 20-point scorer as your teammate, or do you want 4 guys who average 12? Depends on the system that you're running. When you say help, when you say, I heard you saying competition. All right, so what's better competition? A team that wins 50 games or a team that wins 45 games with a bunch of 20-point scorers that, maybe don't work well together as a team? Well, that's going to depend on your definition of competition. So typically we say the team that wins the most games. And I'm assuming you're talking LeBron and Jordan, so I'll use that as an example. I hear you say all the time, oh, he had more finals competition. Well, if you go by record, Jordan's teams that he faced in the finals were on average a higher seed with more wins than LeBron's.
All right, y'all, there you go. Again, I told you they were going to bring it up, and they did bring it up. But watch how I go ahead and expose them. No one can answer this question. Watch how I break it down.
Like I said, because if we go there, because again, all this that we do is based off of responses from what you guys do. Because if we go to team records, LeBron James has beaten more teams with better record than Jordan has in the playoffs.
That I will have to do the math. I'm not going to debate.
No, we have it. We have the math already. We have the math. No, we have the math. LeBron James has beaten more teams that has a better record than his team in the playoffs than Michael Jordan did. There it goes for you right there.
What?
I love the silence. I really do. But if we look here, you can see these are all the teams that Michael Jordan or LeBron James has played in the playoffs that had a better record than them that they actually beat in the playoffs. So if we're going off of team records, doesn't this mean LeBron James faced teams that were tougher than him, being that these teams actually had better records than his teams, and he beat more of them than Jordan did? So by using their criteria, Michael Jordan rarely beat a team that was better than his. And then you guys get mad when we say Michael Jordan never really beat anybody. These are the narratives that I love to expose. But I'm not done. I actually got more for y'all. Now let's remember, they also brought up seeding. This shows how disingenuous they can be in this argument, because they basically want to reward Michael Jordan for being a lower seed and facing a higher seed. If we go to 1986, when the Bulls only won 30 games and was the 8th seed and had to face the #1 seed Celtics, they're going to say that Michael Jordan faced a #1 seed that won 67 games. So basically they're rewarding him for actually losing. But LeBron James's teams were rarely low seeds. They were usually in the top 4 seeded teams in their conference. So we cannot punish LeBron James for being the higher seed and facing lower seeds, or for winning actually 50 games and being in the 2nd seed, which is what they're going to say if you look at the Detroit Pistons, who won 53 games in 2007 and is the number 1 seed. So does this mean the number 1 seeded Pistons are not as good as the number 1 seeded Celtics because they only won 53 games and the Celtics won 67 games? You see how contradicting these criteria are? There's no way to determine whether or not the Celtics' 67 wins are better than the Pistons' 53 wins. They didn't face the same competition. They didn't play in the same era, under the same pace. The dynamics are just too large to actually make such a comparison. But in all, they still haven't debunked my criteria. Let's go back to that. Sports Fluent wants a chance at it.
Look at the teams that have been winning throughout the years. Maybe the last 10 years is a bad example because of the Warriors. But in most cases, it's a team with 1 superstar and the proper role players around them. Giannis didn't have a superstar teammate. Kawhi didn't have a superstar teammate in Toronto. There's opportunity. I'll say this. With the Warriors,
Fluent. That's what I'm saying.
Warriors before
what describes you as a superstar? What describes you as a superstar?
Ooh, I'm very picky on superstars, so I'm tough.
No, not you, because you're throwing out what people say in general. So in general, what is a superstar?
In general, yes. A superstar, there's typically, I don't know, like a star player who's going to lead a team to a deep playoff run. I don't know, like a star player who's going to lead a team to a deep playoff run, who has the talent, the skill, and the statistics.
Hold up, wait. I got to hear this again.
Who has the talent, the skill, and the statistics. Who has the talent, the skill, and the statistics.
Okay, so basically you have to be a player that goes deep in the playoffs and have the talent, the skills, and of course, y'all listen, the statistics. Now, he is speaking in general, but let me show you why this criteria is pure nonsense. By that criteria, the human highlight reel was not a superstar. By that criteria, T-Mac is not a superstar. He agreed on this one here. Chris Bosh was not a superstar. Kevin Love was not a superstar. Kyrie Irving is not a superstar. AD is not a superstar. I mean, if you got to go deep into the playoffs, that means Luka is not a superstar. You have to reach at least your conference finals to go deep into the playoffs, correct? And this is why in GOAT James Kingdom, we do not go by labels such as superstar. It is completely subjective and there's no real criteria. I'm going to even explain further. Now, he mentioned the 2021 Bucks had only 1 superstar, but I would love everybody to go ahead and go look up Chris Middleton's numbers between 2018 and 2021, and also Drew Holiday's numbers between 2018 and 2020 before joining the Bucks in 2021. And you'll see how good those two have been for the Milwaukee Bucks. But he also mentioned the 2019 Raptors, who only had Kawhi Leonard, who he claims was the only superstar on that team. If we go by his criteria, someone who goes deep in the playoff that has talent and the skill and the statistics, which one of these Raptors would you say led that team to the Eastern Conference Finals in 2016? This is Kyle Lowry's numbers from 2016 to 2018, and this is DeRozan's numbers from 2016 to 2018. But if you look at their 2016 playoff numbers, who was really the leader of this team? Who really took them to the Eastern Conference Finals? This is why these criteria literally bite these people in the ass. It does not help you understand what we're talking about when we're talking about basketball and who's a good player or not, or what's a great team or not. By using my criteria, DeRozan would be the better player because he is the 20-point per game scorer and has the more All-NBA selections. And most NBA fans would agree with my criteria. But for some reason, our panelist does not agree with my criteria. Let's continue on and watch what else they say. I'm telling you guys, this is going to be great.
When the fans vote for the majority of All-Stars, you can't use that in any argument. You can't use 2 things. All-Star, because it's fan voted. Even now it's 50%, but before it was more. And Hall of Fame. Because Hall of Fame isn't the NBA Hall of Fame. So when you say Hall of Famers, throw that out the damn window because it means
bring
nothing.
Bring up the criteria.
Wow. So now he officially stated all-star selections don't matter. And he even said the Hall of Fame, y'all. Yes, the Hall of Fame does not matter. Again, y'all, we hear it all here at GOAT James Kingdom. But as you can see, they still have yet to talk about all NBA and all defensive selections. They refuse to do that. It clearly destroys their logic. And this is why this criteria is considered the ultimate help versus comp criteria. It's just the best way to make a comparison. But let me go ahead and finish.
How do we really make that comparison? Because we're trying to make a comparison. That's what we're doing. All we're doing is making a comparison. We're not really going because like you said, there are other factors.
You're giving Jordan a 6th man of the year. That was the year he played 17 games, and you're giving Kukoc the 6th man of the year.
Wrong.
Correct.
No, that was 1996. That was 96.
96. He was a 6th man of the year. Okay, and then 6 All-Stars. Okay, you're going back before the 90s.
Wrong.
No, 6 All-Stars is all Scottie Pippen.
Yeah, but there was 2 years where they won the chip that he wasn't an All-Star. So you're going back
but they made the playoffs.
That's what I'm saying. You're going.
I'm using all 13
his
playoffs.
First All-Star. His first. Oh no, I think you're wrong. His first All-Star year.
1990. His All-Star is 1990.
His first All-Star year was the year that they lost in 7 to the Pistons, and then where he played 1 minute in Game 7 because he had a boo-boo. He had a headache.
Wrong.
He played 40 minutes.
He played 40 minutes. He made an All-Star that year, and then he didn't make an All-Star the first year they win a chip.
He was all defensive though.
But he didn't win an All-Star. I'm just counting the All-Stars here. Yeah.
No, obviously, but you just said All-Stars don't matter. See how you just said that?
But I know that. But you have it here. I'm just going by what.
I'm just saying. I'm just counting All-Stars because All-Stars.
I'm just making sure your numbers are accurate. That's all I'm doing.
No, trust me, they're accurate.
Pippen was only an All-Star in 4 of the 6 championship runs. So I'm trying to figure out where you got the other 2 from. So the other
95 and 90.
So 95, which is the year that Jordan played 17 games.
Yes, but he was in the playoffs.
Where he was okay, and then the year before they won a chip. So you're counting. You're not just doing championship years. I just want to be clear. You're doing.
Yeah, I'm not counting. I'm not counting 94, and I'm not counting the Wizards years.
Okay. So you're telling me in his 15-year career. One player made it of his teammates in 15 years. Only one player made 6 All-Star games in 15 years that he played.
Yes, All-Stars. Yes.
Okay.
Again, you see they are avoiding the All-NBA and All-Defensive selections, and he's talking All-Stars.
We always say that. We've always. If you look up to the right, you can see LeBron James. Right? How many All-Stars he says LeBron James has?
Yeah, no, I'm just like I said, I'm just making sure I understand what each thing is saying.
Yeah, even though you said All-Star games don't really matter, but
they don't.
It's like a mute point. LeBron has more. It's like a mute point.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same thing with like the 20 points per game.
20 per score. Yeah, 20 points per game.
Last week we had Craig bring up how Kyrie Irving could average 25 points per game with LeBron James. So, and that Scottie Pippen only averages 16 points for his career. Okay, these are things that we hear now, sports fans. So we just did it with the simple things because, like I said, even today, 20 point per game score. I know there's a lot more of them, but that's why the NBA is so good.
Because, for example, Bosch is a 20 point per game scorer, but not when he plays with LeBron because LeBron is so ball dominant. He doesn't get those opportunities. Kevin Love is a 20 point per game scorer, but not when he plays with LeBron because LeBron is so ball dominant. He doesn't get that.
Again, they're not talking about all NBA or all defensive team. They want to talk about the 20 point per game scores, which is real funny because he's saying that LeBron James is ball dominant. Michael Jordan has the #1 usage rate of all time. So Michael Jordan's team also played with a ball dominant player. Also, Michael Jordan had players who had career years after playing with Michael Jordan, like B.J. Armstrong and Horace Grant and Scottie Pippen.
If I look at Luka over the next from now until the next 5 years, and I say how many 20-point scorers did he go against in the playoffs, his numbers can be astronomically higher than LeBron's because there's 2 20-point scorers on every team now. That wasn't the case in the 90s, as an example.
And by that statement alone, he is admitting that today's NBA is better than the 90s. Of course, Luka's going to face tougher competition with the type of competition that exists in today's NBA. We accept that as LeBron James fans. As basketball fans, we understand the evolution of the game. The players are just better today. So we won't be fighting tooth and nail about Luka's competition, Giannis' competition, or Joker's competition. These guys are facing one of the greatest eras we've ever seen.
You know, Jordan played versus a lot of 20-point scorers in the 80s, but you know that's
and just out of curiosity, why is that the cutoff? Why is 20 point the cutoff?
Because that was the standard that that is what Jordan fans have created. Because all I ever hear is Scottie Pippen
using the Jordan narrative for this. Simple as that.
I've interviewed a lot of Jordan fans, and I don't know that anyone have ever said 20 points is the cutoff.
Listen,
I've never actually heard that argument.
Last week, Craig brought up the fact that Scottie Pippen only averaged 20. He couldn't average 25.
This narrative of Pippen not averaging 20 is the reason.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And
I'm the best there is, plain and simple. I mean, I wake up in the morning, I piss excellence, and nobody can hang with my stuff. You know, I'm just a big, hairy American winning machine. If you ain't first, you're last. You know what I'm talking about?